Robert Louis Stevenson. Treasure Island. Chapter 15. The Man of the Island. From the side of the hill, which was steep and full of stones, some small rocks suddenly fell and rolled loudly through the trees. I looked there at once, and I saw a figure jump quickly behind a pine tree. I could not tell what it was. It might have been a bear, a man, or a monkey. It looked dark and hairy, but I could not see more. This strange sight made me stop in fear. Now it seemed that I was trapped on both sides. Behind me were the murderers, and in front of me was this strange, hidden creature. At once, I began to prefer the danger that I knew to the danger that I did not know. Even Silver seemed less frightening than this creature in the forest. So I turned around and began to go back toward the boats, looking carefully behind me as I walked. At once the figure appeared again. It made a wide circle and tried to get in front of me. I was already tired, but even if I had been fresh, I could see that I could not run faster than it. It moved from tree to tree like a deer. It ran on two legs like a man, but not like any man I had ever seen. It bent forward almost double as it ran. Still, I could no longer doubt that it was a man. I began to remember stories about cannibals. I almost called for help. But the fact that it was a man, even if he was wild, made me feel a little calmer. At the same time, my fear of Silver began to return. So I stopped and thought about how to escape. While I was thinking, I suddenly remembered my pistol. As soon as I knew I was not without a weapon, I felt brave again. I turned toward this man of the island and walked quickly in his direction. By now he was hiding behind another tree. But he must have been watching me closely, because as soon as I started to come toward him, he came out again and took a step toward me. Then he stopped, stepped back, came forward again, and finally, to my great surprise, he fell on his knees and held out his hands as if asking for help. At that, I stopped again. "Who are you?" I asked. "Ben Gunn," he answered. His voice sounded rough and strange, like a rusty lock. "I'm poor Ben Gunn, I am, and I haven't spoken with a Christian for 3 years. Now I could see that he was a white man like me, and his face was even quite pleasant. His skin, where it could be seen, was burnt by the sun. Even his lips were dark, and his light eyes looked very bright in his dark face. Of all the poor men I had ever seen or imagined, he was the most ragged. He wore torn pieces of old ship canvas and sea cloth. All these strange pieces were held together in many different ways, with brass buttons, bits of wood, and loops of rope. Around his waist, he wore an old leather belt with a brass buckle. This was the only strong and whole thing he had on him. 3 years, I cried. "Were you shipwrecked?" "No, mate," he said. "I was marooned." I had heard this word, and I knew it meant a terrible punishment often used by pirates. A man is left on an empty island with only a little powder and shot. "Marooned 3 years ago," he continued, "and I have lived on goats, berries, and oysters since then. Wherever a man is, I say, he can take care of himself. But mate, I really want proper food. You don't have a piece of cheese with you, do you? No? Well, many long nights I have dreamed of cheese, mostly toasted. And then I wake up, and I am still here. If I ever get back to the ship," I said, "you will have as much cheese as you want." All this time he was touching my jacket, feeling my hands, looking at my boots, and showing a simple, childlike happiness to see another person. But when I said my last words, he suddenly became more alert and a bit suspicious. "If you ever get back to the ship, you say," he repeated. "Well, who will stop you?" "Not you, I know," I answered. "And you are right," he cried. "Now, you. What is your name, mate?" "Jim," I told him. "Jim, Jim," he said, clearly pleased. "Well, Jim, I have lived so badly that you would be ashamed to hear it. For example, you wouldn't think I had a religious mother just by looking at me?" he asked. "No, not really," I answered. "Ah, well," he said, "but I did. Very religious. And I was a good, polite boy, and I could say my lessons so fast that you could not understand a word. And this is what happened, Jim. It started with playing games on the graves in the churchyard. That's how it began, but it went much further. My mother told me it would happen. She did, that good woman. But it was fate that brought me here. I have thought about everything on this lonely island, and now I want to be good again. You won't see me drinking much rum, only a very little for luck when I get the chance. I will be good, and I know how to do it. And Jim," he looked around and spoke very quietly, "I am rich." Now I felt sure that the poor man had gone mad from being alone, and I think my face showed it, because he said it again strongly. "Rich, rich, I tell you. And I'll tell you this, I will help you become a great man, Jim. Ah, Jim, you will thank your lucky stars that you were the first to find me." Then suddenly his face became serious. He held my hand tightly and raised one finger in a warning. "Now, Jim, tell me the truth. That is not Flint's ship, is it?" he asked. At that moment I had a sudden good idea. I began to think that I had found a friend, and I answered him at once. "It's not Flint's ship, and Flint is dead. But I will tell you the truth as you asked me. There are some of Flint's old crew on board. Bad luck for the rest of us." "Not a man with one leg?" he said quickly. "Silver?" I asked. "Ah, Silver," he said. "That was his name. He's the cook and also the leader." He was still holding my wrist, and when I said that, he squeezed it hard. "If you were sent by Long John," he said, "then I am as good as dead, and I know it. But where do you think you are?" I decided very quickly what to do, and I told him the whole story of our voyage and the trouble we were in. He listened with great interest, and when I finished, he patted me on the head. "You're a good boy, Jim," he said. "And you are in a very difficult situation, aren't you? Well, you can trust Ben Gunn. Ben Gunn is the man to help. Do you think your squire would be generous if someone helped him, since he is in trouble, as you say?" I told him that the squire was very generous. "Yes, but you see," said Ben Gunn, "I don't mean giving me a small job and a uniform and things like that. That's not what I want, Jim. What I mean is this. Would he give me, say, £1,000 from the treasure, which is already almost his?" "I am sure he would," I said. "We had agreed that everyone would share." "And a passage home?" he asked, looking very clever. "Of course," I cried. "The squire is a gentleman. And also, if we get rid of the others, we will need you to help sail the ship home." "Ah," he said. "Yes, you would." And he looked much more relaxed. "Now I'll tell you something," he went on. "Only this and no more. I was on Flint's ship when he buried the treasure. There were 6 men with him, 6 strong sailors. They were on the island for almost a week, and we stayed out at sea in the old Walrus. One day we saw a signal, and Flint came back alone in a small boat with his head tied in a blue cloth. The sun was rising, and he looked very pale. But there he was, and the 6 men were all dead, dead and buried. No one on the ship could understand how he did it. It must have been a fight and murder, him against 6 men. Billy Bones was the first mate, Long John was the quartermaster, and they asked Flint where the treasure was. "Ah," he said, "you can go ashore if you want and stay there, but as for the ship, she will sail on again." That is what he said. Well, 3 years ago I was on another ship, and we saw this island. "Boys," I said, "this is where Flint's treasure is. Let's go ashore and find it." The captain did not like the idea, but the rest of the crew agreed, and we landed. For 12 days they searched for the treasure, and every day they became more angry with me. Then one morning they all went back to the ship. "As for you, Benjamin Gunn," they said, "here is a gun, a spade, and a pickaxe. You can stay here and find Flint's treasure for yourself," they said. Well, Jim, I have been here for 3 years, and I have not had any proper food in all that time. But now look at me. Look carefully. Do I look like a simple sailor? No, you will say. And I was not either. Then he winked and pinched me hard. "Just say those words to your squire, Jim," he went on. "And say this too. He was not a common sailor. Those are the words. For 3 years he was alone on this island day and night, in good weather and bad. Sometimes he would think about praying, you will say. And sometimes he would think about his old mother, if she is still alive, you will say. But most of his time, this is what you will say. Most of his time was spent on another matter. And then you will give him a little pinch, like I do. And he pinched me again in a very secret, friendly way. Then, he continued, you will stand up and say this. Gunn is a good man, you will say. And he trusts a real gentleman much more, a great deal more, remember that, than these gentlemen of fortune, because he used to be one himself. Well, I said, I don't understand anything you are saying, but that does not matter now. How am I going to get back to the ship? Ah, he said, that is the problem. But I have a boat that I made with my own hands. I keep it under the White Rock. If things go badly, we can try to use it after dark. Hi, he suddenly cried. What's that? At that moment, although the sun was still up for another hour or two, the whole island echoed with the sound of a cannon. They have started fighting, I cried. Follow me. I began to run toward the anchorage. I forgot all my fears. The marooned man in his goatskin clothes ran beside me easily and quickly. Left, left, he said. Keep to your left, Jim. Stay under the trees. That is where I killed my first goat. They don't come down here now. They stay high up in the hills because they are afraid of Benjamin Gunn. Ah, and there is the cemetery. That is what he meant. Do you see the small mounds? I came here to pray sometimes, when I thought it might be Sunday. It was not really a church, but it felt more serious. And then, you will say, Ben Gunn was alone. No priest, not even a Bible or a flag. He kept talking as I ran, without waiting for any answer. After some time, the cannon was followed by a series of gunshots. Then there was another pause, and then, less than a quarter of a mile in front of me, I saw the Union Jack flying above the trees.